Hello, everybody. My name is Melanie Machado-Guichon, and I'm one of the editors of the book Talking About Global Inequality. And with me today, we have Camila Vergara, who is one of the contributors to our edited volume. Camila Vergara is a political philosopher, critical legal theorist, historian, and journalist from Chile, working on the relation between inequality, corruption, and domination, and also on how to institutionally empower common people to resist oppression from the powerful few. She's currently a Marie Sklodowska-Curie Fellow at the University of Cambridge. And Camila is also the author of the book Systemic Corruption, Constitutional Ideas of an Anti-Oligarchic Republic. Let us now turn to you, Camila, and your contribution. One of the central aspects of our edited volume has been to explore how inequality scholars from around the world have been shaped by the places they have lived and worked. And in your essay, you mentioned growing up on your grandfather's ranch in southern Chile. You also mentioned that this is where you had your first job at the age of 10 as a cowgirl on the ranch. And you write that this experience made you confront dynamics of socioeconomic hierarchies. And I'd like to zoom in on this passage and this experience, because how exactly this experience, you working on a ranch owned by your grandfather at a very young age, how did it shape your understanding of power and inequality?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to contribute to the volume first and to be able to talk a little bit more about it. So I believe that inequality is, well, it's a very abstract concept that can also be very material. We experience it. And me growing up in the circumstances in a Chile that was very close to more like a feudal system than what we are accustomed now, more modern, employer-employee relations, it was more feudal at the time in terms of the power that my grandfather, the employer, had over the people. Factually, not that he was a tyrant or anything, all the opposite. However, the relation was still there. And for me, inequality is not only about, of course, socioeconomic conditions, but also about knowledge. And at that young age, the people that I work with, these cowboys, that they knew everything about the farm and the animals, that was a knowledge that I didn't have. And I respected it very much. They knew about weather and the different animals, and I learned so much from them. So when it came to confronting that kind of a subordinate position in terms of practical knowledge in the field versus my own position in society, that created a rift that I couldn't live with. I couldn't just kind of brush it under the rug. And for me, was formative to understand that inequality is arbitrary, that inequality has different layers, and that is not only contextual to my perspective or my experience, but actually it replicates everywhere in similar manners.
Yeah. Thank you very much for clarifying on that. And then I have a second question for you, which is about two central concepts that you use in your contribution. And that is the first one being oligarchization of power, and the other one, systemic corruption, which is also the title of the book, as I mentioned. And you use these terms quite a bit in your essay. So I'd like to ask you if you can explain and elaborate a little bit on these two concepts, and also ask you why, according to you, they are relevant to talk about when we're discussing global inequality.
Yes, well, first, the oligarchization of power is something that comes as a concept and as a problem in society, comes from the early 20th century with Robert Michels, who writes about the iron law of oligarchy. And basically what this law, is a social science law, says is that in every type of human organization in which there is specialization of some sort, some division between the grassroots and the leadership, that gap between these two groups will inevitably grow. Okay, so we have that naturally. So when we have we think about our democratic system in which we elect a ruling elite that is inherently separated from us in a way, distinguished. They go to the center of the nation. They are kept away in parliament and other behind closed doors. They're different from us. They're better than us supposedly. Then we have a problem of oligarchization happening. And we don't really realize it because we think that is the only way that we can manage our societies. So systemic corruption comes from this premise that we have oligarchization happening across the board in all organizations, but also in the political sphere. And that what it means is that when these people that are in charge of running the countries make law, they're not making law only, or at least not primarily, for the good of the nation or the good of all. What it has been happening is that they legislate for the good of the few, of their own group or the wealthiest in society. And this makes corruption not individual, not that I bribe a specific parliament representative, but that the law is made to benefit more the powerful few than the many. And that it creates a greater gap that is exponentially growing, right? So we have that now in society. So these two concepts are interrelated, that we need to think about our crisis of democracy and the way the international system is structured as well, based on, for example, trade agreements in which there is a difference between core and periphery countries, and there are laws that are structured and rules that are structured in order to benefit corporation instead of countries in the periphery, for example. That is how we have created our architecture in terms of legal means, that we need to look at that with a critical eye from the point of view of systemic corruption, that we need to question if the rules of the game that we have designed through these representative institutions or through expert institutions are really serving the many or the few. We just take that for granted. We as moderns believe that the law is equal to the good. And we need to separate that because many law is inherently corrupt, made by corrupt public officials or by very negligent ones, or really self-serving. So we need to critically address that in order to look at global inequality as well. Global inequality is not something natural. It's something that is created through our rules. For example, we have risk-taking. Risk-taking allows for a bigger gap to grow between those who are the many and the few. And our rules of the game create stability, and stability allows for risk takers to have more risks in order to, because everything is safe. So there were frontiers of investment, for example, before, like China, which was off limits because the investors say this is too risky. Now the rules of the game allow for the risk to be minimized, and therefore for the powerful few to even get greater returns because there's stability. There's no the kind of the threat of being expropriated, right? And the business to go away. So what is the aim of the rules that we have created and how it fosters global inequality instead of bridging the gap between the few and the many?
Thank you very much. And on that very perfect elaboration of those two terms, I would like to thank you for taking part in this interview and also for giving an example of what readers can read about in the book Talking About Global Inequality. Thank you.